J-Lo was the pride of Alera. He was a warrior like no other, with a physique carved by years of training and a face that made women steal glances when they thought no one was looking. His broad shoulders and sharp jawline, paired with a smile that carried both strength and warmth, made him the village's ideal of a hero. But J-Lo's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Behind the admiration and applause, he carried a burden that no one could see. His manhood, unusually large, made him the subject of whispers and jokes. What some might have considered a blessing had become a source of deep loneliness for J-Lo. Women were often drawn to him at first, but became distant once intimacy was on the horizon. The relationships he dared to pursue ended in heartbreak, leaving him isolated in a world where he was both celebrated and misunderstood. The villagers were divided in their feelings about him. Many adored him for his bravery on the battlefield, the way he defended their land without hesitation. They saw him as a protector, a man who would do anything for his people. But others envied him. His fame, his looks, and his charm made them feel small in comparison. Even some women who admired him spoke in hushed tones, spreading tales about his curse, unsure whether to pity or avoid him. Among those who harbored mixed feelings was Karim, J-Lo's childhood friend and fellow warrior. Karim had always lived in J-Lo's shadow. Though he was strong, skilled, and respected in his own right, he felt overshadowed by J-Lo's fame and charm. He envied the way people's faces lit up when J-Lo entered a room, the effortless way he commanded attention. Karim hid his jealousy well, masking it with humor and camaraderie. "The great J-Lo," he often said with a grin, "the hero of Alera, too busy being perfect for the rest of us mere mortals." But in his heart, Karim wished to have even a piece of the admiration J-Lo received so effortlessly. J-Lo, on the other hand, valued Karim as one of the few people who treated him like an equal. Despite Karim's occasional jabs, J-Lo believed they came from a place of friendship. He confided in Karim about his struggles, hoping for understanding. As they trained together in the early mornings, sparring under the rising sun, J-Lo often wondered if Karim truly understood the weight he carried. Being admired was one thing. Being understood was another. While the village whispered about his heroics and his supposed curse, J-Lo longed for someone who could see beyond his exterior and appreciate the man he was beneath it all. For now, he buried those feelings deep within, focusing on his duty as a warrior. He had a role to play in Alera, and he wouldn't let his personal struggles interfere with the safety of his people. But even as he sharpened his sword or stood guard at the village gates, a small part of him hoped that one day someone would see him not as the perfect warrior or the man with the whispered-about burden, but as J-Lo, the man who longed for love and understanding. Night had settled over Alera, and the village bustled with its usual evening life. The tavern glowed warmly in the heart of the village, filled with laughter and chatter. But even as people filled the space, J-Lo sat alone at a corner table, his strong hands wrapped around a wooden cup. The noise around him felt distant, like the world was moving on without him. He took a sip, staring at the flickering light of the lantern. His mind wandered to the past, to the relationships he had tried so hard to build, only to see them crumble. There was Adira, the blacksmith's daughter, who had once been enchanted by his strength and charm. They had walked by the river together, and for a moment, J-Lo thought he'd found someone who truly cared for him. But when their relationship grew closer, Adira hesitated, her eyes filled with discomfort rather than affection. She had left without a word. Then there was Mala, a traveling herbalist who visited the village every few months. She was kind and gentle, and J-Lo had thought her understanding heart would accept him fully. But even Mala, when confronted with his physical reality, grew distant. Her rejection came in the form of a soft apology that stung more than any sword could. The weight of those moments was heavy. J-Lo's strength and courage meant little in the face of rejection. He wasn't the man people thought he was, a perfect hero. He was just J-Lo, a man who longed to be loved but couldn't seem to find it. As he brooded, Karim slid into the seat across from him, a wide grin on his face. He slapped the table with his hand, startling J-Lo from his thoughts. "Drinking alone again, my friend," Karim said, waving to the tavern keeper for a drink. "A man like you shouldn't sit in the shadows. You're the mighty J-Lo after all." J-Lo sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Not tonight, Karim. I'm not in the mood." "Not in the mood?" Karim echoed with mock disbelief. "The great J-Lo not in the mood? What's next, the sun refusing to rise?" J-Lo shot him a look, but Karim continued, his grin unwavering. "Come on, you know I'm joking. But seriously, what's eating at you? A woman turned you down? Hard to believe when you've got the whole village swooning over you." Karim's words cut deeper than they were meant to. J-Lo forced a smile, hiding the pain that threatened to surface. "Maybe being admired isn't everything," he said quietly, sipping from his cup. Karim chuckled, but the humor faded from his face when he noticed the seriousness in J-Lo's expression. For a moment, guilt flickered in Karim's eyes. He often teased J-Lo out of envy, but it hadn't occurred to him that the man he admired might feel emptier than he looked. Meanwhile, across the room, Amani sat at a table with her father, a merchant who had just returned from the nearby town. Amani was the picture of beauty. Her long, braided hair glistened in the tavern's lantern light, and her bright eyes danced with curiosity as she glanced around the room. When her gaze settled on J-Lo, her cheeks flushed slightly. Amani had always admired J-Lo from afar. She had seen him training in the fields, his movements powerful yet graceful. She had heard the tales of his bravery, the way he had fought off bandits and protected the village time and again. But she had also heard the whispers, the rumors about his manhood and the stories of women who had rejected him. Amani wasn't sure how much of it was true, but it made her hesitate. How could she approach a man like J-Lo when the village seemed to think of him as a curiosity more than a person? As she watched him, Amani noticed the heaviness in his posture, the way he seemed lost in thought even as Karim tried to lift his spirits. Her heart ached for him, but fear held her back. She looked away quickly when J-Lo glanced in her direction. The night carried on, with the tavern's noise growing louder as the cups emptied. But for J-Lo, the world remained quiet and distant. He finished his drink, nodded to Karim, and left without a word. As he walked back to his hut, the moonlight casting his shadow on the ground, the loneliness he carried felt heavier than ever. Alera awoke to the sound of warning drums. The kingdom was under attack. An invading army had been spotted marching toward the village, their banners darkening the horizon. Men grabbed weapons, women and children hurried to safety, and the air filled with the tension of an impending battle. J-Lo stood at the front of the gathered warriors, his broad shoulders straight and his face calm despite the chaos around him. Beside him was Karim, gripping his spear tightly. This was no ordinary raid. It was an organized force, larger than anything Alera had faced before. "We fight for our home," J-Lo said, his voice steady and commanding. "For our families and our future. Stand strong, and we will prevail." The warriors raised their weapons in agreement, though fear flickered in their eyes. They knew J-Lo would lead them fearlessly, but the odds were daunting. The battle was fierce. The invaders swarmed the village gates, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm Alera's defenses. J-Lo fought like a storm, his sword flashing as he cut through enemy after enemy. His strength and skill inspired the men around him, pushing them to fight harder. Karim stayed close to J-Lo, his spear striking down foes with precision, but as the battle wore on, Karim began to falter. An enemy soldier charged toward him, blade raised, and Karim froze for a moment too long. J-Lo saw the danger and acted without hesitation. He stepped in front of Karim, blocking the attack and taking down the soldier with a swift strike. But the move left J-Lo exposed. Another enemy's weapon slashed across his side, and he staggered, blood staining his tunic. He swung his sword one last time, defeating the attacker, before collapsing to the ground. "Jallo!" Karim shouted, rushing to his side. He knelt, panic and guilt flooding him as he looked at his friend's wound. "Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me." The sight of J-Lo falling sent a wave of anger through the warriors, who rallied with renewed fury. They drove the invaders back, defending their village with all their might, but Karim barely noticed the victory. All he could see was J-Lo, unconscious and bleeding in the dirt. When the battle was over, J-Lo was carried to the healer's hut. The village called for Nia, the most skilled healer in Alera. She was known not only for her knowledge of herbs and remedies, but also for her calm, compassionate presence. Her beauty was striking. Her dark, smooth skin glowed under the sunlight, and her sharp eyes held both wisdom and warmth. But beneath her composed exterior, Nia had heard the whispers about J-Lo. She had heard the tales of his manhood, the rumors of rejection, and the village gossip that painted him as both a hero and an oddity. When Nia entered the hut, her gaze fell on J-Lo lying on the wooden cot. His tunic had been cut away to reveal the wound on his side, and his chest rose and fell shallowly as he breathed. For a moment, Nia hesitated. She had seen warriors injured before, but there was something different about seeing J-Lo like this. He was vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. "You're the only one who can save him," Karim said, his voice tense. "Please." Nia nodded and moved quickly, her hands steady as she examined the wound. It was deep, but not fatal. She worked silently, cleaning and stitching the gash with precision. As she worked, her eyes lingered on J-Lo's face. His features, so strong and confident in battle, now seemed softer, almost fragile. J-Lo stirred, groaning softly as the pain pulled him back to consciousness. His eyes opened, meeting Nia's for the first time. There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken words. Nia saw something in his eyes, a mix of gratitude, pain, and a hint of embarrassment. "You'll be fine," Nia said, her voice gentle but firm. "The wound isn't as bad as it looks. Rest now." J-Lo tried to speak, but the words didn't come. He nodded instead, his eyes never leaving hers. Nia turned her focus back to her work, but her thoughts lingered on the man before her. He wasn't just the warrior everyone spoke of. He was human, with fears and vulnerabilities like anyone else. As she finished and stood to leave, Karim caught her arm. "Thank you," he said. "You saved him." Nia nodded, but her mind was already racing. She had stepped into that hut expecting to treat a hero, a legend. What she found instead was a man, one who carried burdens far heavier than his sword. Outside, the village buzzed with talk of the battle and J-Lo's heroics. But inside the healer's hut, the air was quiet, filled only with the steady rhythm of J-Lo's breathing and the unspoken connection that had sparked between him and Nia. The dim light of early morning filtered through the cracks in the healer's hut. Nia worked quietly, her hands moving deftly as she checked the bandages on J-Lo's side. He lay on the cot, his breathing steady but his face turned away from her. It wasn't the stoic warrior she had expected to meet. This man, silent and still, seemed vulnerable. As she leaned over him to adjust the dressing, J-Lo shifted slightly, his eyes opening just enough to meet hers. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and hesitant. "You should rest," Nia replied, her tone gentle but firm. "The more you talk, the longer it will take for you to heal." J-Lo offered a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Talking's not my strong suit anyway," he muttered, closing his eyes again. Nia paused, studying him. She had heard the rumors, the whispers about his manhood that painted him as both a source of fascination and an object of ridicule. But seeing him like this, quiet, shy, and almost unsure of himself, was not what she expected. Beneath the layers of strength and legend there was something softer, something fragile. "You're not what I imagined," Nia said softly, her words escaping before she could stop them. J-Lo opened his eyes again, his brow furrowing slightly. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "People talk. They say things. Some of it true, some of it nonsense. But they don't see this side of you. They don't see you." J-Lo's jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked as though he might shut down completely. But then he exhaled, his shoulders relaxing. "People see what they want to see," he said. "A warrior, a hero, or whatever else they think." "And what do you want them to see?" Nia asked. J-Lo didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his words came slowly, as though he was piecing them together for the first time. "I just want to be seen as a man, not a hero, not a curse, just me." There was a vulnerability in his voice that caught Nia off guard. She reached out instinctively, her hand brushing his arm. "I see you, J-Lo," she said. For the first time, J-Lo looked at her with something more than gratitude. There was a softness in his eyes, a glimmer of trust that hadn't been there before. Outside the hut, Karim watched through a crack in the wooden walls. He had come to check on J-Lo, but the sight of Nia leaning close to him stopped him in his tracks. Her hand rested gently on J-Lo's arm, and the look they shared sent a surge of jealousy through Karim. Nia's beauty had captivated Karim from the moment he met her. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind were qualities he admired, but her striking appearance left him mesmerized. She was the kind of woman who carried grace effortlessly, and seeing her so close to J-Lo felt like a blow. Karim clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. It wasn't just about Nia. It was the pattern, always the same. No matter how hard Karim tried, J-Lo always seemed to overshadow him. On the battlefield, in the village, and now with Nia. It wasn't fair. He turned away from the hut, frustration boiling inside him. As he walked back toward the village square, his thoughts raced. Nia had always been kind to him, offering a warm smile or a gentle word when they crossed paths. But now it seemed that J-Lo, with his effortless charm and quiet strength, had captured her attention too. "He gets everything," Karim muttered under his breath, the bitterness thick in his voice. The admiration, the respect, and now her. But deep down, Karim knew it wasn't just jealousy. It was something darker, a fear that he would always be second best. That no matter what he did, J-Lo's shadow would always loom over him. Back in the hut, Nia finished tending to J-Lo's wounds. She gathered her supplies and stood, looking down at him. "You need to rest," she said again, but this time her voice was softer. "Let yourself heal. Not just your body, but everything else too." J-Lo nodded, his eyes following her as she moved to the door. "Thank you," he said again, this time with more weight behind the words. As Nia stepped outside, the cool morning air greeted her. She paused, her thoughts lingering on the man she had just left. There was more to J-Lo than the village gossip, more than the rumors or even the admiration, and she was beginning to see it. But as she walked away, she had no idea that someone else was watching her, their heart heavy with unspoken feelings and rising resentment. J-Lo's strength began to return, and with it, so did the light in his eyes. Each day, Nia came to the hut to change his bandages and check his recovery. Their conversations, once brief and hesitant, grew longer and more personal. J-Lo found himself talking about things he had never shared with anyone. His childhood in Alera, the pressures of being a warrior, and the pain of rejection that followed him like a shadow. Nia listened intently, her warm eyes encouraging him to open up. "You're stronger than you think," she said one afternoon, gently pressing a fresh bandage against his side. "Not just on the battlefield, but here." She placed her hand over his heart. J-Lo's chest tightened, but not from pain. There was something in her voice that made him feel seen, not as a warrior or a legend, but as a man. Yet even as he felt drawn to her, a familiar fear crept in. He wanted to tell her how he felt, how her presence had become the brightest part of his day. But he couldn't shake the thought of what might happen if their relationship became more intimate. Would she, like the others, turn away? The thought made him hesitate, keeping his feelings buried beneath his guarded exterior. For Nia, her admiration for J-Lo only grew. She saw not just his physical strength, but the quiet kindness in his actions, the way he asked about her day, the soft smile he gave when she told him stories, the gratitude in his eyes when she cared for him. But their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Amani, the merchant's daughter, often passed by the healer's hut, her gaze lingering on the two of them through the open doorway. She couldn't deny the admiration she felt for J-Lo, but seeing him with Nia stirred something bitter inside her. Amani had admired J-Lo for as long as she could remember. She had dreamed of him noticing her, of sharing a life with the handsome warrior everyone in the village respected. But now, seeing Nia in his life, those dreams felt impossible. One evening, as she walked home from the marketplace, the bitterness finally spilled over. "What does she have that I don't?" she muttered to herself. "Why does she get to have him?" Fueled by envy and frustration, Amani began whispering to others in the village. She spoke of Nia's skills as a healer, twisting her reputation into something suspicious. "You know," Amani said to a group of women at the well, "it's strange how Nia always seems to be so effective with her herbs. Almost too effective. Don't you think it's possible she's adding something extra? Something to make men fall for her?" The whispers spread quickly. Soon people began to murmur about Nia's remedies, wondering if there was truth to Amani's insinuations. Herbal concoctions, they said, ensnaring men, bending them to her will. Nia noticed the shift almost immediately. Villagers who once greeted her warmly now avoided her gaze, some even whispered behind her back as she passed. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her work and on J-Lo, but the weight of the rumors pressed heavily on her. J-Lo remained unaware of the gossip. To him, the world outside the hut barely mattered. He spent his days recovering, slowly regaining his strength, and his moments with Nia became the highlights of his days. One evening, as Nia prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "J-Lo," she said, turning back to him, "there's something I need you to know." He looked up, his expression curious. "People are talking about me," she said, "about my work, my herbs. They're saying I'm doing something unnatural." J-Lo frowned, sitting up straighter. "Why would they say that? You've done nothing but help this village. You are the best healer in Alera." Nia shrugged, trying to appear unaffected. "Sometimes people don't need a reason. They just need something to talk about." J-Lo's jaw tightened. He didn't know the full extent of the rumors, but hearing even this much filled him with anger. How could anyone doubt Nia's integrity? "You don't deserve that," he said firmly. "You've helped so many people. If they can't see that, it's their loss." Nia smiled softly, touched by his words. "Thank you," she said, "but I can handle it." As she left the hut, J-Lo watched her go, his mind filled with thoughts of her. He didn't know how to protect her from the whispers, but he vowed to be by her side, no matter what the village thought. Meanwhile, Karim's frustration had reached its peak. One afternoon, he cornered her outside the hut. "Nia," Karim began, his tone softer than usual, though his words were heavy with intent. "Can I speak with you?" "Of course," she said, tilting her head curiously. Karim hesitated, then plunged forward. "You're wasting your time with J-Lo." Nia frowned. "What do you mean?" "You've heard the rumors," Karim said, stepping closer. "You know why he's alone. He can't give you what you deserve, as you will not have intimacy. You deserve love, Nia, real love from a real man, not whatever J-Lo can offer you." Nia stared at him, her expression calm but her voice firm. "Karim, love is more than just intimacy. It's kindness, trust, and understanding. J-Lo is a good man, and I won't judge him for something he didn't choose." Karim's jaw tightened. Her dismissal stung, and her defense of J-Lo annoyed him even more. "You think you know him," he said bitterly, "but when the time comes, you'll see what everyone else has." Nia shook her head. "I see what others don't, Karim. I see a man who's trying to heal, not just his body but his heart. That's enough for me." Karim's frustration boiled over as Nia walked away, her back straight and her resolve unshaken. He felt defeated and humiliated. The village was buzzing with tension. The whispers about Nia had grown louder, and the once respected healer now found herself the subject of scrutiny and suspicion. People who had once trusted her with their lives now looked at her with doubt. "She uses strange herbs," some murmured. "Perhaps there's something unnatural about her remedies." Others, fueled by Amani's earlier accusations, went even further. "What if she's enchanting the men? Look how J-Lo clings to her now." Nia heard the rumors wherever she went. but she held her head high. She had faced challenges before, and she refused to let baseless gossip define her. But even her calm demeanor couldn't shield her from the pain of knowing that her own community doubted her integrity. J-Lo remained unaware of the depth of the rumors until Karim, emboldened by the growing unrest, decided to speak his mind. "You should be careful, J-Lo," Karim said one evening as they sat by a fire outside the hut. "Careful of what?" J-Lo asked, his tone sharp. "Of Naya," Karim said, feigning concern. "The village is talking. They're saying she's using her herbs to control you, to make you feel things you wouldn't otherwise." J-Lo's eyes narrowed, his voice rising. "What are you talking about? Nia is a healer. She's saved countless lives in this village. You know that." Karim hesitated, then let his jealousy spill out. "It's always about you, isn't it, J-Lo? You get the fame, the respect, and now her. I've stood by your side for years, and yet here I am, watching you take everything I've ever wanted." J-Lo stared at him, shocked by the admission. "This is about you, not Nia. You've let your envy blind you to the truth. Nia doesn't deserve this, and neither do I." Karim fell silent, his face twisted with frustration. J-Lo shook his head and walked away, leaving his friend to wrestle with his guilt. Meanwhile, Amani found herself caught between her resentment of Nia and a growing sense of doubt. She wanted to believe that spreading those rumors would make her feel better, but instead it left her feeling empty. She couldn't deny the truth. J-Lo and Nia had something real, something she had never shared with J-Lo. One day while gathering fruit near the edge of the forest, Amani reached into the bushes and froze. A deadly green mamba snake lay coiled beneath the leaves, its eyes locked on her. Before she could move, it struck, sinking its fangs into her leg. Amani screamed, collapsing to the ground as the venom began to spread. Villagers rushed to her aid, carrying her to the local healers, but their efforts to save her seemed futile. Her condition worsened, and it became clear that without a miracle, she wouldn't survive. Someone ran to find Nia, who hesitated for only a moment before gathering her supplies and rushing to Amani's side. Despite everything, the rumors, the accusations, Nia's duty as a healer came first. Over the next 2 days, Nia worked tirelessly. She prepared special antidotes, applied salves, and stayed by Amani's side, monitoring every change in her condition. Slowly, Amani's fever broke, and the swelling began to subside. By the 3rd day, she opened her eyes, weak but alive. When Amani regained her strength, she asked for Naya. Sitting up with difficulty, she looked at the healer who had saved her life, tears welling in her eyes. I was wrong," Amani said. "I spread those rumors about you, and I'm sorry. I was jealous. Jealous of how J-Lo looked at you, jealous of the person you are. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. I'll never forget that." Naya nodded, her expression calm. "Jealousy can make us do things we regret, Amani. But I'm glad you're here to make it right." That evening, Amani stood in the center of the village and publicly apologized to Nia. She told everyone how Nia's skill and dedication had saved her life, and how foolish she had been to doubt her. The villagers, moved by her words and ashamed of their own doubts, came to Nia one by one to express their gratitude and regret. Later that night, J-Lo found Nia sitting outside her hut, gazing at the stars. He approached slowly. "I need to tell you something," he said, sitting beside her. She turned to him, her eyes soft and patient. "What is it?" "I'm not good at this," J-Lo admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "But I can't keep it to myself anymore. Nia, I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone." Nia smiled, her heart swelling at his words. "I care about you too, J-Lo. But there's something you need to know," he continued, his voice quieter now. "I've been rejected before because of me. I don't want you to feel pressured or scared. If I'm too much..." "Stop," Nia interrupted gently, placing her hand on his. "You are enough, J-Lo. More than enough. I see you for who you are, not what others say about you. And I love you, just as you are, your manhood and all." J-Lo felt the weight of his fears lift as her words sank in. He leaned closer, their foreheads touching as they sat in the quiet night, the stars shining brightly above them. For the first time in a long time, J-Lo felt truly at peace. The morning came with a sense of urgency. Alera's watchmen sounded the warning drums once more. An enemy force was advancing toward the village. This time it was a larger and more organized threat, determined to take Alera by force. J-Lo rose from his bed, his injuries healed enough for him to fight. He strapped on his armor, his movements steady and purposeful. This was the life he had chosen, and no matter the danger, he wouldn't abandon his people. As he stepped out of the hut, he found Nia waiting for him. She looked at him with a mix of pride and worry, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I do," J-Lo replied, his voice firm but kind. "This is who I am. I protect Alera, no matter what it costs me." Nia stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "Then I'll be there too. I'll tend to the wounded, just like I always have." "No, Nia," J-Lo said, shaking his head. "It's too dangerous. And you think it's any easier for me to watch you go into battle?" She countered, her voice trembling. "We're in this together, J-Lo. If you're going to fight for Alera, I'll fight in my own way." J-Lo sighed, but he knew better than to argue. Nia's determination was unshakable, and in truth, he felt a sense of comfort knowing she would be close. The battlefield was chaos. The enemy army surged toward Alera's gates, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. J-Lo led the charge, his sword cutting through the air with precision and power. Beside him was Karim, fighting with a fierceness that surprised even himself. Karim's guilt over his actions had weighed heavily on him, but this was his chance to prove his loyalty. He fought shoulder to shoulder with J-Lo, their movements synchronized like the brothers they once were. "Watch your left," Karim shouted, stepping in to block an attack meant for J-Lo. "Thanks," J-Lo replied, striking down another enemy. The two men exchanged a quick nod, their rivalry set aside in the face of a greater threat. As the battle raged on, J-Lo found himself facing more than just the enemy soldiers. His mind wandered to the whispers that had haunted him for so long. The doubts, the rejections, the sense of being different. But as he fought, he realized something. His strength, his courage, and his ability to protect the people he loved all came from the same place. His uniqueness wasn't a curse, it was his power. J-Lo's movements became more fluid, his strikes more confident. For the first time, he embraced himself fully, knowing that his differences didn't define him. They empowered him. Behind the front lines, Nia worked tirelessly, tending to the wounded. She moved from soldier to soldier, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. Her presence was a source of calm for the men, many of whom owed their lives to her skill. At one point she looked up and saw J-Lo in the distance, his sword raised as he led a charge against the enemy. Her heart swelled with pride, but also fear. She had never seen him so fierce, so unstoppable, and it reminded her of what was at stake. An enemy arrow struck a soldier near her, and without thinking, Nia rushed forward to pull him to safety. The battlefield was no place for a healer, but she refused to stand by while lives could be saved. "Nia!" someone shouted, but she didn't stop. J-Lo caught sight of her from the corner of his eye and felt his chest tighten. Seeing her in the thick of danger fueled his resolve. He fought harder, carving a path through the enemy forces, determined to protect her and everyone else who depended on him. As the sun began to set, the tide of the battle turned in Alera's favor. The enemy forces, weakened and demoralized, began to retreat. The cheers of victory rose from Alera's warriors, but J-Lo's first thought was of Nia. He found her near the edge of the battlefield, tending to a soldier's wounds. She looked up as he approached, her face lighting up with relief. "You're safe," she said, her voice trembling. "So are you," J-Lo replied, pulling her into a tight embrace. Karim approached moments later, bloodied but victorious. He looked at J-Lo and Nia, a mix of emotions crossing his face. But instead of jealousy, there was acceptance. He had fought beside J-Lo, and in doing so, he had let go of the bitterness that had weighed him down for so long. "You fought well," Karim said, clapping J-Lo on the shoulder. "So did you," Jalo replied, a small smile breaking through the exhaustion. That night, as the village celebrated its victory, Jalo and Naya sat together beneath the stars. The battle had tested their strength, their loyalty, and their love, but they had emerged stronger. "You know," Jalo said, his voice soft, "I wouldn't have gotten through this without you." Naya smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And I wouldn't have gotten through it without you. We're a team, Jalo. Always." As the stars glittered above them, Jalo felt a sense of peace he had never known before. For the first time, he wasn't just a warrior or a hero. He was a man who loved and accepted for who he was, and that made all the difference. The morning after the battle, the villagers gathered at the gates of Alera to celebrate their victory. Jalo and Karim stood side by side as the warriors were honored by the king himself. The air was filled with cheers and gratitude, the people of Alera rejoicing in their newfound safety. "Jalo, step forward," the king commanded, his voice carrying across the crowd. Jalo obeyed, kneeling before the ruler. The king's face softened into a smile as he placed a hand on Jalo's shoulder. "You led this village to victory," the king said. "Your bravery and strength saved us all. For this, you will be rewarded richly." The king handed Jalo a ceremonial sword, its hilt encrusted with jewels, and announced that he would be granted land at the edge of the village, a place to call his own. The crowd erupted into applause. "Karim," the king continued, beckoning him forward. Karim knelt beside Jalo, and the king spoke with equal admiration. "Your loyalty and courage in battle were instrumental to our victory. For this, you too shall be rewarded." Karim received a fine spear and a silver medallion, a symbol of his newfound standing among the warriors of Alera. Though Jalo's rewards were greater, Karim felt no bitterness. Instead, he looked at Jalo with a newfound respect. Their rivalry was finally laid to rest. As the ceremony concluded, the villagers swarmed the square, congratulating the warriors and sharing stories of the battle. But Jalo's eyes searched for Nia, and when he found her standing at the edge of the crowd, he felt his heart lift. That night, Jalo and Nia sat together in the quiet of his new home. The fire crackled softly, casting warm shadows across the room. For the first time in days, they were alone, free from the demands of war and the weight of the village's expectations. Jalo looked at Nia, his expression tender. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "For everything you've done, for me, for the village. I wouldn't be here without you." Nia reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "And I wouldn't be here without you," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "You've shown me what real courage looks like, not just in battle, but in your heart." As the firelight danced between them, their connection deepened. Jalo hesitated, his insecurities flickering to the surface. "Nia, there's something I've always feared," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I'm too much for you? What if I—" Nia silenced him with a gentle touch to his face. "Jalo," she said, her eyes locked on his. "I love you for all that you are, and I've been preparing for this moment, not out of fear, but out of love." She revealed a small pouch of dried herbs, explaining that she'd been taking a special preparation designed to ease intimacy. "I wanted us to have this moment without pain or fear," she said. Jalo's eyes softened, gratitude and affection washing over him. Together they embraced, and their love was finally expressed fully and freely. It was a joyous and tender night, one that sealed their bond in a way neither had thought possible. The next day the village was alive with celebration, not only for the victory but for the story of Jalo and Nia. The villagers, inspired by Jalo's courage and Nia's unwavering dedication, began to see them in a new light. "He's more than a warrior," they said, "and she's more than a healer. Together, they're unstoppable." The gossip and doubts that had once surrounded them faded away, replaced by admiration and respect. A week later, Jalo and Nia stood before the village in a simple but heartfelt ceremony. The people of Alera gathered to witness their union, their hearts full of joy. The couple exchanged vows under the open sky, surrounded by the same community that had once doubted them. Karim stood at Jalo's side, his support unwavering. Amani, too, attended to her admiration for J-Lo and transformed into genuine happiness for his newfound love. As J-Lo and Nia exchanged rings, the crowd erupted into cheers. The love that had faced so many challenges had triumphed, becoming a symbol of hope for all of Alera. Together, J-Lo and Nia began a new chapter, their hearts full and their future bright. J-Lo and Nia's love only deepened with time, their bond strengthened by the challenges they had faced together. In the months following their marriage, the village began to notice a new glow about Nia, her smile even brighter than before. Soon, their joy became known to all. Nia was with child. The news was met with celebration across the village. For many, the baby symbolized a new chapter for Alera, one marked by hope and unity. When the day finally came, Nia gave birth to a healthy, bouncing baby boy. His cries filled the air, a sound that brought tears of happiness to both his parents. J-Lo held his son in his arms, the weight of the tiny life filling him with a sense of pride and wonder he had never known. "He's perfect," J-Lo whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And he's ours," Nia replied, resting her head against J-Lo's shoulder. They named him Eshan, a name that meant gift in the old language. For J-Lo and Nia, he was more than a gift. He was the embodiment of their love and resilience. Meanwhile, Karim's journey of self-discovery had begun to bear fruit. He had spent years living in J-Lo's shadow, but the events of the last battle and the reconciliation with his friend had given him a new perspective. Karim began to focus on his strengths, his skills as a leader and a strategist. Over time, he earned the respect of the village not as J-Lo's rival, but as a hero in his own right. When the king offered him the opportunity to lead Alera's guard, Karim accepted with humility and pride. "I finally understand," Karim said to J-Lo one day, as they shared a drink by the fire. "It's not about competing with you. It's about being the best version of myself." J-Lo smiled, clinking his cup against Karim's. "You've always had it in you, Karim. I'm just glad you see it now." Amani, too, found a new path. She had spent so much of her life yearning for J-Lo, but her near-death experience and reconciliation with Nia had given her clarity. What she thought was love had been admiration, and what she truly needed was to find her own purpose. With her father's blessing, Amani decided to pursue her dream of travel. She joined a merchant caravan, eager to see the world beyond Alera. As she packed her belongings, she stopped by J-Lo and Nia's home to say goodbye. "I wanted to thank you," Amani said, her voice sincere. "Both of you, for showing me what real love looks like and for helping me find my own way." "You'll do great things, Amani," Nia said, embracing her. "And you're always welcome here," J-Lo added with a smile. The village grew stronger, its people united by the lessons they had learned from the couple's love and perseverance. Eshan grew up surrounded by that love, his parents teaching him the values of courage, compassion, and acceptance. He often played in the fields where his father had once trained, dreaming of the day he would make his own mark on the world. J-Lo and Nia watched their son grow with pride, their love for each other as vibrant as ever. They knew their journey had not only changed their lives, but had also left an indelible mark on the hearts of those around them. In the end, their story was one of growth, healing, and the unshakable power of love, a legacy that would endure for generations to come.